From the ground now to the sky, are Donald Trump's security protections about to include more from the military? That's topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight. Hello, good evening from Washington. Once again, I'm Blake Berman, live with you tonight throughout the hour here from the White House, where we learned today that President Biden will be heading to battered Southwest Florida over the weekend on Sunday. Tonight, at least 11 are dead from Hurricane Milton. Over 2 million Floridians are still without power. Out on the campaign trail today, Donald Trump in Colorado, unveiling that he would invoke an 18th century law to target illegal migrant criminal networks, as he puts it. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, in Arizona, vowing not just to appoint a Republican in her cabinet, but to create a, quote, bipartisan council of advisors. But first tonight, here from the Hill, re-examining Trump's safety. From the ground to the roof and now to the skies. The Washington Post is reporting this evening that the Trump campaign is requesting the use of military aircraft in the final weeks of the campaign to keep the Republican nominee and 45th president of the United States safe. Now, if that happens, it would be a first of its kind. But it also comes after 2 assassination attempts and an ongoing threat from Iran. President Biden here at the White House today saying Trump should get whatever he needs within boundaries.
I've told the department to give him every single thing he needs for any other, as he were sitting president, give all that he needs. If it fits within that category, that's fine. But if it doesn't, he shouldn't.
Former Secret Service agent Charles Marino will join us here on the Hill in a moment, but we begin tonight with our Joe Khalil, who has been covering the former president and his security for months now. Joe joins us live once again in Washington. Joe?
Yeah, Blake, so the Trump campaign's requests would be unprecedented if they were fulfilled. But as you mentioned, we're also in a really unprecedented moment in our history after 2 attempted assassination attempts. We reached out to the Trump campaign. They have not gotten back to us yet, but the Secret Service did. And essentially what they're telling us is that some of what Donald Trump is asking for, they are already providing. Take a look. Secret Service says he does have military airlift. He does have restrictions over his rallies and his home in terms of flights that are coming in and out. They provide him unmanned aerial vehicles and ballistics and advanced tech. And this is what they went on to tell us. Today, the former president is receiving the highest levels of protection. The Secret Service is going to remain vigilant and continue to adjust and enhance its protective posture as needed to mitigate evolving threats. Oftentimes, Blake, the campaign has asked for something and they have gotten it a few days or weeks later. We did also reach out to our congressional sources on the task force investigating Donald Trump's attempted assassinations, and they tell us they're aware of the requests, but so far no comment from them. So we'll see whether the Secret Service continues to provide the former president with his new requests, which again would be unprecedented.
Joe Khalil live for us here tonight in Washington. Joe, thank you. Joining us now, the former Secret Service Special Agent Charles Marino. He is also the author of a new book titled Terrorists on the Border and in Our Country. Charles, thanks for being back with us tonight. So military assistance in the air, if it gets to that, what would it look like and how might it be different from what the former president is receiving now?
Well, the U.S. military plays an essential role in the overall security plans and apparatus for sitting presidents and vice presidents. So the question here is, if the former president is now receiving presidential level security, it's natural to assume that the military support will also come for him. And that will be in the form of the military through the White House Communications Agency supporting things like communications. You'll have military support and flight restricted zones, meaning that the airspace above the primary residence, Mar-a-Lago, and temporary sites where the former president is speaking would be closed and enforced by the military. But the big question here, and where it's really unprecedented, is regarding the secure military transport of the former president.
Yeah, so obviously Donald Trump has his own plane, right? And it's right. It's not a typical private plane. It's more like a plane you and I would see on a runway. Would he be traveling in that still? Or are we talking about potentially putting him on, you mentioned the president and the vice president, they fly on Air Force One and Air Force Two. Would it be involved with putting him on an actual government plane?
Yeah, and we'll have to go back and analyze the specific intelligence that they have regarding the threats specifically out of Iran, and if those correlate to his current transportation arrangements. But yeah, it seems to me as though the request is to actually fly on that U.S. fleet of military aircraft.
Would that be out of bounds in your view? Would that be out of bounds or appropriate as you see it?
Well, you know, I've been arguing during my appearances with you that the resources should match the threat level. And that's why I'm interested in that updated specific intelligence coming out of Iran that U.S. officials have obtained. If there is a reference in that intelligence, for example, as a hypothetical, a threat to the air travel of the former president, then I think it would be inbounds. So really, the resources that are brought need to match and exceed that current intelligence. And if it requires the use of military aircraft and support from the U.S. military, then I think that's something that the current administration would have to entertain.
Real quick, Charles, do you think Donald Trump has everything he needs right now?
Not everything. Not everything. I think the Secret Service is still struggling with the resources. They're spent. The budgets need to be increased. They need to get greater access to the equipment that they need, especially in the final push of this campaign. Things like ballistic glass can't be everywhere. And this is a new paradigm shift. They're going to have to be prepared for this going forward, because Congress will pass that bill that says both the Republican and Democratic nominees will be entitled to presidential protection.
Charles Marino, former Secret Service agent, joining us once again here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Blake. Thank you.
You as well. Meantime, out on the campaign trail tonight, there are growing concerns among Democrats about the trend of Vice President Harris's campaign, with questions about how, if at all, might she be able to close the gender gap right now with men. Now, the vice president today wrapping up a tour of Western swing states, focusing on bipartisanship at an event in Arizona.
I know we are going to win this election, and it is not going to be easy. There are forces at play that are making us as Americans, I think, call into question certain fundamentals that we've always taken for granted.
NewsNation Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer joins me now here at your work home, I guess, or one of your work homes here at the White House. The concerns are growing.
Yeah.
And we saw this, for example, yesterday from Barack Obama himself. First appearance out on the campaign trail for Vice President Harris.
Yeah, and I know we were saying then when you bring out someone like former President Obama and then where you place him, you know that that's somewhere that they are concerned about and they want to make sure they have locked in. I actually just got off the phone with the Harris campaign, talking with them about the dynamics of what they call this very unique race. They say the map is wide open and they're visiting all areas. No area is off limit. I believe we have a look at the current polling that we're seeing across the board. It is close in every part that they want to win. It is tied up in the Rust Belt. You see the blue wall, and then over where she was in Arizona, Nevada yesterday, it's tight. And we also saw that they are both going to be in Pennsylvania on Monday. We're going to follow her to Erie County, a county that they want to win. And then we also saw in Pennsylvania, as we were saying, former President Obama, and he was talking specifically to black voters, making sure that black male voters come out and vote for her, because he's saying they're not seeing them come out for her in the way they came out for him when he was running. Take a listen to this.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. I'm speaking to men directly now. Part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president.
So that Barack Obama yesterday talking to black men.
Yeah.
The Harris campaign today, Kelly, as you know, is about to start a tour with the running mate, Tim Walz, and trying to focus on men.
We're seeing the race in these last final weeks break down as Trump is doing well with male voters, and the Harris campaign is trying to catch up. And we're seeing
it's almost an identical gender gap on both sides.
Yeah.
The gap with Kamala Harris for men, you can almost flip that identically for women.
Exactly. So women coming out for Harris, men coming out for Trump. So they're trying to break that. They're dispatching Tim Walz in the battleground states, focusing on male voters. They're sending them out to high school football games and pheasant hunting this weekend to get the male support, specifically in those blue wall states.
They had him out talking to Michael Strahan in an interview.
Right.
Michael Strahan, NFL Hall of Famer. Exactly. Kelly Meyer, live for us here at the White House. Kelly, thank you. The swing state polls still tight, as Kelly referenced, for the most part, within the margin of error in the 7 key states. Donald Trump's former White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor Mick Mulvaney has a new piece in thehill.com. Mick's op-ed is titled, "How You Know the Democrats Think Trump is Going to Win." And from his worldwide travels back here in the States tonight, Mick Mulvaney joins me live here on the Hill. Nice to see you, sir. Always great to talk to you. Your piece there caught my attention because we're starting to hear whispers from Democrats of saying, I don't know, not sort of the vibes that they had maybe a week ago or a month ago. Explain your piece and what you mean.
Yeah, look, with a race as tight as this is, and everybody admits this race is very tight, the folks who do what we do tend to look for things that sort of stand out as being a little bit different. Trump, for example, coming out in the last 24 hours and offering deductibility of interest on car payments. That's very strange for a Republican to do. Does that sort of signal that maybe they see some weakness in some polling? On the other side of the ledger, seeing the Democrats do a couple different things that are just different. And one of them that stuck out to me is this institutionalized attack on the Electoral College. Democrats have complained for years how Republicans can win the White House without winning the popular vote. But now that has a name. It's called the Electoral College bias. It's got think tanks backing it up. It's got high-level Democrats talking about it. Tim Walz is out on the campaign trail talking about getting rid of the Electoral College. Now, the Harris campaign sort of disavowed that, but that strikes me as greasing the skids for a loss. Nothing speaks like we're getting ready to lose than sort of making excuses in advance.
Can I go back real quick, Mick, to the first thing that you said? Because in the last 24 hours here, Donald Trump has talked about the deductibility of auto interest. Today he came out with, if you buy a generator, it's fully deductible. That last one in a time of storm that we're seeing, you could argue has merit. But this is now just one after the next. No tax on tips, Social Security, this one, that one. You're a fiscal conservative, Mick. Is that fiscal conservatism as you see it, or is it, on the other side of the argument, is it maybe him getting desperate?
No, it's pandering. I mean, listen, tell me, Donald Trump is the first politician ever to try and pander to votes late in an election? No, everybody does it. Both sides are pulling out the stops. And what I think the Trump campaign is doing is like, look, maybe we'll upset the fiscal conservatives, but they're still not going to vote for Kamala Harris. Maybe we can add a couple votes here in the last couple of days. Maybe we can get people motivated to show up. Just like the Democrats sending Obama to Pennsylvania to wave his finger at black voters, at black men, and said, now don't be sexist. There's another part of your clip that you did show where he actually accused them of not being ready to vote for a woman. So they're both taking calculated risks here in the last day of the election, and it just speaks of how very tight things are.
Mick, let's go back to where we started the show here. I believe as the chief of staff, when you were chief of staff in the White House, you had a say over government aircraft. I don't know who got them or when they flew out. You can explain it better, but with the reporting tonight of the Washington Post, what do you make of the Post reporting that Donald Trump might be asking for military aircraft for his safety?
Listen, what level of protection is going to depend on a couple different things. Primarily, and your previous guest said it accurately, what's the level of actionable intelligence? What's the real threat level? Are we seeing the same? Yes, everybody knows that Iran has made threats against President Trump. We get that, 100%. There's no dispute there. But what's the real actual intelligence? What do our intelligence agencies telling us about their ability to actually do that? And if they see something in that, they would never tell the public about it.
Right.
But if they see something, they might suggest a higher level of protection for the president. My point regarding the actual airplanes themselves, they would probably come out of the VIP airlift wing at Andrews, which is technically run out of the White House by the chief of staff. So the current administration will have a direct input as to whether or not Donald Trump does get that level of protection. protection, and it should be based specifically on the actual intelligence that we are getting.
Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. We'll see you later in the show, about 30 minutes from now. Thank you, sir.
See you in a bit.
Yep. All right. Still to come here from the Hill on NewsNation. Florida continues to clean up after Hurricane Milton ravaged many parts of the Gulf Coast. We are live from Florida this evening in the hardest hit areas and speak with one mayor about how they are trying to pick up the pieces. All this and more after the break. Plus, George Will here on the Hill, how he views the state of the race tonight. Hello from the White House this evening. I'm Blake Berman. We're back in 4 minutes. Stay with us.
FEMA and the Corps of Engineers and the Florida National Guard are now on the ground helping the state clear debris to reopen roads and critical ports.
President Biden earlier today here at the White House during a briefing on the response efforts for two major hurricanes, Milton and Helene. On Sunday, the president will travel to Florida to visit areas impacted by Milton, the recent Category 3. Tonight in western Florida, right now along the Gulf Coast, at least 11 people are dead and over 2 million are still without power. According to Gas Buddy, 28% of the gas stations all across the state of Florida are without fuel. Our Alex Capriello, once again for us in Tampa this evening. That's a parking lot behind you, Alex. I see a lot of water.
Yeah, a lot of water. We're here in Tampa, and this is the result of those heavy and torrential rain pours that came down when Hurricane Milton made landfall. And you could see it really has not gone anywhere. Several cars out there in the distance. You could see the blue one out there in the back. The water still all the way up to the headlights. The reality is, Blake, this is what a lot of these neighborhoods in this section of Tampa look like. There's a lot of rivers and lakes that are nearby. Those all reached record levels when that storm came through. And so all of this water had nowhere to go. And here it is right here on the street. Earlier today, we shot some brand new drone video that we can also show our folks at home. So that way you can see just how vast this water really is. It's going into apartments, into assisted living homes, into actual homes themselves. People that have no electricity and 3 feet of water right there in their living room. So it's really, really hard to see the people here struggle to get through it. We have seen local officials out here trying to do their best. Contractors are bringing chainsaws. They're trying to clear out debris. We've seen high water rescue vehicles drive through some of the very, very deep waters in order to make rescues. And we just got new numbers from the Hillsborough County Sheriff. He says his team has rescued more than 700 people and more than 100 animals. So they're doing their best to make sure that everyone is accommodated for, but at the very same time, the people living here say they've never seen floods like this before, and it's going to be a long time until they can actually get their life back together. Blake?
Alex Capriello, live for us once again in Tampa tonight. Alex, thank you. There are signs of recovery in Florida, though. Today, Siesta Key officially reopened, allowing for residents to return to the Barrier Island. It's located in Sarasota County, where Hurricane Milton made landfall 2 nights ago. Joining us now is Kurt Hoffman. He is the sheriff in Sarasota County. Mr. Sheriff, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. What's the biggest challenge you have tonight? I was just watching Alex Capriello north of you there in Tampa. What about where you are in Sarasota?
Yeah, similar things down here in Sarasota. We're finding that there's a lot of gas stations without fuel. Obviously, the debris cleanup now is kind of what we're focusing on, so we can open these areas back up, open these neighborhoods back up, and let the folks get back in there. And today we did open the Key and several other of our barrier islands. But I toured it today with the Lieutenant Governor when she was here. There's an awful lot of devastation out there on our coastline.
Do you have everything you need, Sheriff? There's been a lot of conversation about response efforts and the like. At this point, we're about 48 hours after all this. Do you have what you need?
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We've had the Florida State Guard, the Army Florida National Guard down here. And in Florida, the Florida Sheriff's Association has a network of the other 66 sheriffs that are in Florida. They've sent resources down here for me and to other parts of the state. So in terms of outside efforts, today was the first day we could say that we could handle all this on our own pretty much.
There's no way to judge, quote unquote, normal, right? There's communities, all over the place. If you're out on the islands, you got hit worse more than if you're inland. Some people lost their lives, and families will never be the same. But as I look at these images, when do you think most of your area will be able to return to what they knew just 3 days ago?
I think in terms of being able to access every single one of these communities, in terms of the cleanup, it's going to be months. But every day that I drive to work, I live in the southern end of the county, so I traverse the county on my morning drive in. There's a little degree of normalcy each morning. I saw a few more gas stations open today, saw a few more restaurants open today, some of them serving first responders. Every day it seems to get a little bit better. Unlike Tampa, where you're showing right now, the flooding up there, we got the bottom end of that storm. So we had a lot of wind, awful lot of wind, did some terrible destruction out there, but we're not flooded in places that we traditionally flood. So there's that. We're not waiting for the water to recede to get back in these communities. It's really clearing the sand, clearing the debris, restoring the power. We had the CEO of Florida Power and Light was in our emergency operations center today. They're all hands on deck. We have many emergency crews stationed around here that have been working 24/7. So we're getting there a little bit each day.
A degree of normalcy each day. We hope that comes day after day here for you down there in Southwest Florida. Kurt Hoffman is the sheriff in Sarasota County. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
You are welcome.
You got it. All right. Now from the dark skies of Hurricane Milton to, would you look at this? The spectacular part of Mother Nature. This is the Northern Lights. Just some of the pictures taken across the country last night. Right now, the stunning colors in the sky are visible to the naked eye throughout parts of the United States. At least this was the case last night. It's the result of the strongest solar storm in more than 20 years. Scientists say the light show could last for many months to come. Well, there is still much more ahead here on the Hill. Donald Trump in a Democratic state today proposing to invoke an 18th century law. Kamala Harris in a border state. George Will join us on the other side of the break with where the presidential race stands tonight. 25 days to go. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Former President Donald Trump today proposing new efforts he says he would bring against a Venezuelan gang which has threatened some residents in Aurora, Colorado, if Trump wins the election. Now, during a speech there this afternoon, he highlighted the threats some members of the gang have posed recently.
Upon taking office, we will have an Operation Aurora at the federal level to expedite the removals of these savage gangs, and I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798.
Trump highlighted problems there as part of his focus on crimes allegedly committed by illegal immigrants. City officials, though, have said gang activity claims have been, quote, grossly exaggerated. Our Allie Bradley live for us in Aurora tonight. Allie, this is an interesting one, obviously, because Colorado, not a swing state, but this is clearly an issue for Donald Trump.
Yeah, not a swing state. Voted blue in the last 4 presidential elections, right? Yeah. So the president being here to try to kind of change the tide there a little bit by leaning on immigration, because we know it's an important topic to Coloradans. About 62% of voters care about immigration here in the state, saying that migrants coming from Central and South America are cause for concern. So we saw about 10,000 people at the rally today. It was a sold-out crowd here. People were actually turned away towards the end of it. And, you know, when the president was standing up there talking about the situation with the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, he doubled down. So we talked about the mayor saying that, you know, these comments are, very exaggerated. President didn't care. He doubled down, announcing that Operation Aurora, saying that he will go after these Venezuelan gang members. And if these gang members are removed and they try to return, they will face a 10-year prison sentence. And as you mentioned, he's bringing up this act from the 1700s. And so that's something he's really leaning on here and trying to change the way that voters feel down here, because the Tren de Aragua gang was pretty much started here when it came to the coverage nationwide. It was kind of the epicenter of that gang and what we were talking about. So the Aurora police did actually arrest several of these individuals, several of these gang members that they confirmed to be part of TDA. And so this is an issue here, despite Mayor Kaufman. He's saying that those comments are exaggerated, but he's also saying that that violence that we saw with that violent gang is isolated to several apartment complexes. This wasn't just a one-off, Blake. This wasn't one incident where we saw these individuals. He's saying this happened in several different situations. So clearly a problem, and something I want to note here that is exclusive to NewsNation here today. Arizona is now added to the list for Trendeawagua presence as well. Cochise County Sheriff got a guy who is a suspected TDA member on charges for human smuggling. He crossed at a port of entry in Brownsville, according to what he said to the gang unit, and he claimed asylum, Blake. And now he is in prison facing charges for human smuggling as a TDA member.
Our Allie Bradley live for us tonight in Colorado. Allie, thank you. Today in Arizona, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, on the campaign trail there, questioned whether Trump would abide by his oath of office.
We should actually be concerned and have a question, a legitimate question, in an election for President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, of whether they will abide by the oath.
Joining us now, NewsNation senior political contributor George Will. Mr. Will, thanks for being with us here on the Hill tonight. I want to get to both sides, but let's start broad here for a second. What's the state of the race as you see it tonight with 25 days to go?
The state of the race is remarkably frozen. There's a lot of journalism in the last few days about Democrats being worried about whether Kamala Harris is concentrating sufficiently on the 7 swing states that consensus is are going to decide this. But then look at Mr. Trump. A few weeks ago, he had a big rally on Long Island. He's not going to carry New York. Today, as you just showed, he's in Colorado. He's not going to carry Colorado. He went all the way out to Colorado just to highlight the gang issue, which might work, might not, but it's a peculiar allocation of time at a moment when the race still seems to be frozen.
Frozen, good way to put it. Let me ask you about both sides now. I'll start with Donald Trump. Here's one of the things that he proposed today. He said, we are going to allow you retroactive to September 1st to purchase a generator for your home, which will in doing so entitle you to fully deduct the total cost of the generator. That's today. Just yesterday, Mr. Will, he talked about getting rid of interest on car loans that are and making them fully tax deductible. We already know he's mentioned no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, one after the next. Is that conservative principles, or is that just giving things away to try to win an election? I hear you laugh.
The fiscal year that ended on September 30th saw a $1.8 trillion deficit, and everything you just showed there on that graphic would enlarge the deficit. Mm-hmm. So it's a kind of fiscal incontinence, fiscal suicide for the country. But to be fair and depressing on equally here, as soon as he said no tax on tips, Vice President Harris said, me too. And I expect this auction of tax code pandering will continue.
I just heard Kamala Harris there, the vice president in Arizona today, cast doubt on Trump as it relates to the theme of democracy. But there was a story that caught my attention here in Washington today, Mr. Will. It was in Axios, and here's the headline. It said, quote, scoop, some top Democrats won't commit to certifying a Trump win. And then there's this conversation as well, sir, as it relates to Tim Walz, the governor, Kamala Harris's running mate, as he said at a fundraiser in the recent days, that he thinks the Electoral College should go. And he did an interview with ABC News and was pressed about it. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
So that's something that you and Vice President Harris disagree on? I have spoken about it in the past, that she's been very clear on this, and the campaign, and my position is the campaign's position.
You talked about the fear. What do you think the fear is of Democrats right now?
Well, the fear of Democrats is that Mr. Trump will not abide by the election results if he's the loser. Now, he's advertising, just as he did in 2020, he's now advertising his threat to do exactly that. He said in Nevada 4 months ago, he said the election is not over on Election Day, the election is over on Inauguration Day. That means somewhere like January 6th could intervene there. He said in Nevada, the only way they can beat us is to cheat. So if he loses, the loss is itself, in his mind, proof of the cheating. However, Kamala Harris, while she's worrying about this, ought to give a call to Representative Jamie Raskin, who represents the suburban Washington where I live in Montgomery County, He's already saying, asked if he would support the outcome of the election, he says, yes, if it's a fair election. That's exactly what Donald Trump says. So Democrats have their own history of doing this. In 2004, a very close electoral vote election between George Bush and John Kerry, with Ohio a particularly vital collection of electoral votes, a number of Democrats challenged the certification of the electoral votes. That's 12 years before Donald Trump and the Republicans had their episode of doubt in 2020.
Let me leave you with this. There's a fascinating or interesting dynamic, whatever the adjective is that you want to ascribe to it, of the gender gap. Kamala Harris has basically, I don't know, you want to call it double digit, a dozen or so gap with men, and you can do the flip. Donald Trump has a double digit or dozen or so with women. How did we get here?
Well, this has been emerging for a long time, that Republicans stressing toughness on crime and toughness on this and toughness on that appeal more to men, particularly young men. And the Democrats, with their concern for the caring professions, welfare, and all the rest, have particular strength with women. It's been there a long time. However, the Trump campaign this year is one large testosterone spill. He has Hulk Hogan address the convention, surrounds himself with sort of a kind of extreme models of a particular kind of masculinity. So it's a real thing here. Remember, Donald Trump has a history of associating himself with professional wrestling. Right. Someone once said that the similarity between American politics and professional wrestling is the absence of honest emotions. I'll let your viewers decide.
All right, we'll leave it there. George Will, who I learned tonight is, I guess, my neighbor in Montgomery County. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being with us here on the Hill.
Glad to be with you.
You got it. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Donald Trump calling on CBS to be shut down after a controversy involving 60 Minutes. Plus, he's the country's biggest banker. What Jamie Dimon said today when asked about his political future. We're back in 4. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. The biggest banker in the country, J.P. Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon, long rumored to potentially, just maybe, get into politics, asked about just that earlier today on J.P. Morgan Chase's earnings call. Earlier today, Dimon did not rule out the possibility of serving in an upcoming administration.
If you were asked by the next administration to serve the country, would you be open to considering it?
The chance of that is almost nil, and I probably am not going to do it. But I always reserve the right. I don't make promises to people. They don't have to.
All right, joining me now here on the Hill, Connell McShane, anchor of NewsNation Now, and Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, among his many titles, budget director as well in the Trump administration. Connell, we used to do the business network thing. We are happily here at NewsNation, but this has always been a fascination in that world. What's Jamie Dimon gonna do next? And it was notable that not only didn't he say no, but he sort of left the door open to either administration, whoever might win.
Oh, he always does. So despite the makeup, you don't, which hides it a little. I did the math. Been doing this for 25 years, right? So I started in business news at Bloomberg in 1999. Someone wrote a column about this today, which is what sparked my memory. So I think every election, starting with the 2000 election, there's been a story. I've probably done one on whether Jamie Dimon would be Treasury Secretary. He got fired by Citigroup in '99, and there were all these articles written every election. Now, maybe now, finally, he's 68, he considers it, but I don't know if it'll ever happen.
The interesting thing here, Mick, is, they're talking about his succession plan, right? Jamie Dimon expected to leave, as Connell notes. He's 68 years old. He's not going to stay there forever, and there's long talks of his succession plan over at J.P. Morgan Chase. But, you've said to me in the past, Mick, that there's a long list of very successful folks in the business world who think the politics thing is easy, and then they find out it's not.
Yeah, they do. Every highly successful CEO from across Wall Street, across the country, thinks it'd be easy for them to be president. They'd be great president. And all I can tell you is, if it were that easy, Michael Bloomberg would be president. He just is. It just would be. Look, they are two entirely different worlds. Don't listen to people on Wall Street tell you how Washington works, and don't listen to people in Washington to tell you how Wall Street works. The things are just entirely different. I got news for you, and I got news for Jamie Dimon. I've been on the inside looking out. I'm on the outside looking in. It's a lot more fun on the outside looking in. It's a lot less work. If you're wrong, it doesn't make any difference. So I just don't see Jamie Dimon joining an administration. Look, I think he'd be good at it. That's fine, but I can't see him actually doing it. Who would he do it for, by the way?
Well, that's the better question, right?
He leaves it open. Apparently, he's talking to both candidates.
I feel like Mick is right about that, right? Go ahead, Mick. Sorry.
Well, what a great way to sort of say I'm a team player. I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for.
but think about it. He's like, if he doesn't really fit in with either party right now, because if you're the Republicans, he would be, the Trump folks would say, oh, he's too global. He's a globalist, Jamie Dimon. Yeah. And the Democrats, Harris would never hear the end of it from like Elizabeth Warren if she picked Jamie Dimon. So I feel like either way, it probably doesn't work out. I don't know.
We could do this all night, but we got to leave it here. Thank you, gentlemen. Happy Friday evening. Appreciate it. Catch you both soon.
Thanks, guys.
Shane, Mick Mulvaney, thanks. You got it. All right. Meantime, there is a bit of controversy as it relates to a long-time institution, 60 Minutes, and its interview with the Vice President Kamala Harris after the network appeared to air different answers to a question from correspondent Bill Whitaker. Look here at the promotional clip that CBS posted on social media, on X, before the entire recorded interview was aired earlier this week, and then you can compare it to the answer that actually made it to television. Watch.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
NewsNation has reached out to CBS News. They have not immediately responded to a request for comment. Joining us now is Steve Krakauer, NewsNation contributor. I'm told Mick Mulvaney's hanging around. It's not his Friday night just yet. Steve, this, lots of questions here for 60 Minutes. Donald Trump is saying, release the transcripts, revoke the license. That ain't going to happen. But what is going to happen here, if anything?
Yeah, look, I don't think he's really serious about revoking the license. I know that's a big controversy that he kind of says things sometimes. No, look, it is a given. It's kind of baked in the cake of legacy media like a CBS 60 Minutes, that if you tape an interview, you're going to trim a little bit here and there for time, and you got to make it fit in the commercial breaks. Okay, that's a given. But once you open the door by releasing a clip that then doesn't air that exact same way on the actual broadcast on Monday night, that's going to get people's antennas up, and with good reason. I mean, you see the difference in the way that Kamala Harris appeared in the promotional clip versus what actually aired. It looked obviously like she was much more in command of the answer when it actually aired. And there is actual precedent for releasing a transcript. I don't see any downside to it. And even if you weren't going to do it before, now you've opened this door to this idea of what else did you edit out? I think that it's actually a very smart decision for CBS to go and release the transcript, maybe quietly on a Friday night news dump, because you do have opened the door to some real questions now that they should actually address.
If they did that, Mick, would Donald Trump say that's it, take his ball and go home, or no?
No, listen, I think he had a really good day. I think Donald Trump won today because of this story. How many times have we talked, Blake, about the importance of getting your base motivated right now and reaching out to the right-wing base going, look, the legacy media, they do this. Look, and you've forgotten this. Piece of trivia, I used to work at CBS. And if you came to me and said, do you think CBS edited this piece to make Kamala Harris look better? My guess would be absolutely. And it's simply confirming what a lot of folks in the right wing think, which is the legacy media is out to help Democrats and more specifically to get Donald Trump. And that will fire up the right wing base. So congratulations to CBS. They tried to help Kamala Harris. And what they probably did is give the day to Donald Trump.
Steve, I'll give you the last word here. As I mentioned, we reached out for comment. They haven't responded. When do you think we hear from them next?
I don't know. I look, 60 Minutes is the icon of CBS News. They should respond. It's an own goal. I think that everyone knows, like Mick says, there is a bias in places like CBS. And sure, I think that there would be like Kamala Harris to win. But there is no reason for them to open the door to this kind of thing because they did it to themselves. They didn't have to do this. They could have just put out the preview clip with the actual way they were going to air it. Now they've opened this up, and there's very real reason for people who suspected bias to actually show it for everyone to see.
Steve Krakauer, Mick Mulvaney, we'll leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us here on The Hill. Enjoy your Friday night. Thanks both. Appreciate it.
You too.
The Sunday show that we really hope you watch is with Chris Stirewalt. He hosts The Hill Sunday here on NewsNation. Chris will be talking to the Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, also Senator Pete Ricketts, Republican from Nebraska. You'll hear from the left and the right. Chris will also be talking to the co-founder of the Carlyle Group, David Rubenstein, about his new book, The Highest Calling. That's 10 a.m. Eastern right here on NewsNation. Other side of the break, host of On Balance, Leland Vitter, joins me. Stay with us. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Would you look at that? A big reveal from Elon Musk. Last night, he unveiled Tesla's new robo-taxi. Musk said the Cybercab will cost less than $30,000, and the company is aiming to start building the car by 2026. Just one of a few announcements last night from the world's richest man, Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. Elon Musk has inserted himself into the political race day after day after day. Last night, Leland, I think he tried to get back on brand and put the product front and center.
Well, and if history holds, it means that the robo-taxi will cost $200,000 and be ready sometime around 2030.
And come in 2030, exactly.
Yeah, I thought Mick Mulvaney was very smart earlier when he said what it's like to be on the outside looking in and the inside looking out.